Well, welcome back to continuing the discussion. And today we're going to do something a little bit different. Instead of going into a deeper dive into the last chapter, which is, I think we're on Exodus chapter 16, 17. Today we're going to do a deep dive on Joseph, a man of faith, emotion, and purpose. One of the main central characters in the stories we've read so far. Joseph is one of those rare biblical figures who speaks not just to our minds, but to our hearts. And if you've been walking with us through Genesis and Exodus, you already know how often I've paused in awe of this man. His story isn't just about survival or success. It's about integrity, surrender, emotional honesty, and staying faithful to God's vision when absolutely everything in your life feels like it's falling apart. For me personally, Joseph's journey is one of the most moving in the Bible. There's something so sacred about how he holds space for both the promises of God and the pain of betrayal. He doesn't bury his wounds. He doesn't harden his heart, and he doesn't abandon his purpose. That speaks to me in a deep way, not just as a man of faith, but as someone who tries to live with emotion, conviction, and openness. And I know that's true for many of you out there as well. So today I want to take our time together and reflect more deeply on Joseph, not just the facts of his life, but the layers of who he was, what shaped him, how he handled suffering, and what his legacy means for us today. Let's start at the beginning. Joseph was the beloved son of Jacob, the firstborn of Rachel, the wife Jacob truly loved. That alone created tension in the household. We know Jacob made no secret of his favoritism, giving Joseph a richly ornate robe, the robe of many colors, a visual symbol of special status. In a culture where birth order and inheritance were sacredly observed, this was a problem. It violated tradition, and it bred resentment, especially in the family. Now imagine being Joseph, 17 years old, full of dreams, full of the love for your father, and gifted by God with visions of a future no one around you is wanted to hear. His brothers despised him for it, as a matter of fact, and they didn't just mock him, they plotted to kill him. That betrayal by his own brothers marks the first major rupture in Joseph's life. It's not just a pit they throw him into. It's a tearing apart of everything familiar: family, home, safety, and identity. And what strikes me most is that Joseph doesn't become bitter, at least not in any way that shows up in his actions. He doesn't curse his brothers. He doesn't reject God. He endures it quietly, faithfully. That's the first layer I want us to sit with. Joseph is a man of deep emotional strength. He feels everything, but he doesn't let pain determine who he becomes. He chooses integrity even when the world gives him every reason not to. Sold into slavery, he ends up in the house of Potiphar. And what does he do? He serves with excellence. He earns trust. He rises in position. Joseph doesn't wait until life is fair to start showing up with purpose. But of course his integrity is tested again. Potiphar's wife falsely accuses him, and once again Joseph is punished for doing the right thing. He's sent to prison, and yet even there Joseph remains faithful. He serves, he interprets dreams, he holds on to the gifts God gave him, even when it looks like those gifts are only making his life harder. There's a quiet fire in Joseph. He isn't flashy. He's not trying to make a name for himself, but he doesn't hide either. He is in the best sense emotionally available and spiritually grounded. And I don't say that lightly. There's a Hebrew word that I think captures this spirit well, imanu, imunah. It's often translated as faithfulness, but it carries more than just belief. It's about steadfastness, emotional consistency, and loyalty under pressure. Joseph lives with imunah, through betrayal, slavery, imprisonment, and isolation. He stays rooted. And that inspires me. I think in our culture, we often equate strength with stoicism, hiding your emotions, staying cold and calculated. But Joseph is the opposite. He weeps, he embraces, he feels deeply, and still he leads. That kind of emotional depth isn't weakness, it's sacred maturity. When Pharaoh finally hears of Joseph's gift and brings him out of prison, Joseph doesn't grab the spotlight. He immediately gives credit to God. I cannot do it, he says. But God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires. That humility, that willingness to stay small, even when he's being elevated, that's powerful. That's rare. And once again, Joseph steps into the leadership not for his own glory, but for the preservation of others. He manages Egypt's resources wisely, he prepares for famine, and he doesn't just save the Egyptians. He ultimately saves his own family, the very people who betrayed him. But here's the moment that undoes me every single time. When his brothers come to Egypt and don't recognize him. Joseph doesn't seek revenge. He could have. He had the power, but instead he breaks down in tears. He removes himself to weep privately. And when he finally reveals himself, he says something that could only come from a man deeply in tune with the heart of God. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done and saving many, and the saving of many lives. That's not just forgiveness, that's vision. That's transformation. That's someone who has walked through fire, trusted God with his wounds, and come out the other side with clarity and grace. It takes immense strength to feel pain without becoming bitter, to hold power and not seek vengeance, to be misunderstood and still speak blessing. That's Joseph. And that's the kind of man I want to be. Someone who doesn't hide his heart, but leads from it. Someone who weeps without shame. Someone who never forgets that God has spoken, even when the road to that promise is long, confusing, and lonely. Joseph reminds me that emotional depth is not the enemy of spiritual strength. It is a part of it. His tears are a part of his leadership. His sensitivity doesn't disqualify him. It qualifies him to be the one God trusts with other people's futures. In Hebrew, there's another powerful word I want to bring in here, rachaman, rachamim. It means compassion or mercy. It comes from the same root, rachim, the word for womb. It speaks to a kind of love that is protective, nurturing, and sacrificial. Joseph embodies this. He nurtures the ones who wounded him. He covers them, provides for them, weeps over them. That's not weakness, that's divine. And maybe most profound of all is the way Joseph's story hints forward towards Jesus. Both were beloved sons. Both were rejected. Both suffered unjustly. Both were used by God to bring salvation to others, and both responded to betrayal with grace. I think that's why I feel such a strong connection to Joseph. His life shows us that God does not waste suffering. He refines us in it. He leads us through it, and he prepares us to carry something sacred, compassion, wisdom, empathy, strength. Joseph's life also reminds us that healing and leadership go hand in hand. We cannot lead well if we haven't faced our own wounds. But if we do that inner work, if we let God shape us in the quiet places, we can become people who bless generations. So what do I take from Joseph's story? First, it's okay to feel deeply. Emotions aren't a liability. They're a language. They're a part of how we image God. Second, that integrity is a daily choice, not a reward for when life is easy. And finally, that God's plans often unfold in ways we don't expect. But if but if we remain faithful, if we hold on to the dream, if we use our lives in ways he will use our lives in ways we couldn't imagine. So if you're in a season of betrayal, or if you feel forgotten, or if you're carrying wounds that haven't healed yet, I hope Joseph's story gives you hope. You're not disqualified, you are being shaped, and God isn't done with you yet. Joseph's story teaches us that redemption takes time, and that love, real, merciful, tear-streaking love, can heal even the deepest family fractures. I don't know about you, but I want to be that kind of man, and I believe we can be. Thank you for being here with me in this journey. If Joseph's story spoke to you in this special way, if something in this reflection stirred in your heart, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment, share what God is teaching you with us. We're walking this path together. Until next time, may you stay soft-hearted, strong in faith, and rooted in purpose. Thank you again for joining me for today's Deeper Dive with Joseph, and tomorrow we will see you in the next chapter.